to share, and by share my tech life, I'm actually going to share my screen. Let's see if you can see that. I think can I share my screen?
Yes, I just enabled it.
Okay, good stuff.
Yeah.
Let me share this. Let me know if you can see that.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I've done this presentation before, so it's a little bit, I don't know if anyone has ever watched a show called This Is Your Life. It feels a little bit like that, you know, where Michael Parkinson, I don't know if you ever watched it, would have a guest like Muhammad Ali, and then he would invite people out, and then they were all guests on the show that were part of his life at a certain point. So this kind of feels like that when I go through this presentation. And what this presentation is it basically, it's a chronological view of what I did in the industry up until now. And hopefully along the way, I can talk around some anecdotes and some stories and some things that happened, I think, that will resonate or will help you in your journey into IT, if you choose to take it. So, my name is Emmanuel Ihenacho, or if I want to say it properly, as a Nigerian, Ihenacho. The start of my IT career, I would probably say, was when my mum first bought a computer home, a word processor. This is quite in the days when word processors were big machines. So we never had laptops. We had big, often white boxes that stood in the corner of the office in the house, and you weren't allowed to touch them. But my mum was one of those future thinkers. She bought a machine. She rarely used it, but she actually allowed me to use it, which was one of the, I'd probably say that's the starting point of my life into computing. And these were really big machines. They made a lot of noise, they generated a lot of heat, and they didn't do that much. So I said it was a word processor. You could do some programming in it, some, you know, things like Logo. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it was very, very basic, very, very basic machine. But that was my starting point. And I think what also drove me further into IT was because I used it a lot, I broke the machine. I managed to break it, and I was actually quite scared that I'd be in trouble. I broke it, and then I fixed it. And I learned how to fix the machine just by using it, breaking it, upgrading it, and so on and so on. To the point where I actually broke it totally at one point and had my mum buy a new machine on the basis that I told her that this one was too old. And she actually trusted me on that. So very strange. And I'm sure once my mum watches it, she'll say, oh, okay, I kind of knew that you broke the machine. But anyway, so that's, I think those things, those situations that we create for our children often are the things, they might be small, but they are the things that set us out on a path. And that set me out on a path into IT. So through schooling, through uni, through all that stuff, I always was interested in computing. As part of my degree, actually, I went to university, I took a machine with me, and I used that machine all the way through my degree, built it, upgraded it, etc., etc. I didn't have a gaming rig as cool as this one that you see on the screen, but I did have a pretty cool gaming rig in university. I wanted to be a gamer. I thought that was what computing was all about. Create games, play games, test games, make a lot of money from games. And to some degree, I'm in my 40s now, but I still have some aspiration to still be a gamer and still get into the computer games industry. It's never over. It's always changing. So you never know. Watch this space.
Yeah.
Finished university and had to get a job. I mean, that's what happens, right? You finish uni, you have to go and either get a graduate role or you need to go on the dole. So it's either one or the other, right? And going on the dole means signing up and getting a government check. That's something that I've never done and I didn't ever want to do. So I needed a job. I needed a job to get money so I can buy some more games. That's kind of how I was thinking at the time, right? New game comes out, need some money, get a job, get paid, get more games. And there were some jobs going on at the moment. And this was, I live in South London, and there was a company at the time called Compuserve. And they have, or they had, a base in a place called Reigate. It's in Surrey, sort of near South London where I live. Saw a job in a computer magazine, applied for it, went for the interview, and the interview was very, very interesting. The interviewer actually said to me, here's a computer. I'd like you to copy some files from one folder to another. And based on the way that you do that, I can understand whether you're a techie or not. Very strange. But that was one of the tests of the interview. There was an aptitude test as well and all those other things. There was some skill tests. This was back in the day of Windows 3.1.1. So this is probably way before a lot of you guys probably even existed. I'm showing my age, right? So I worked for Compuserve, and what I did for Compuserve was I was a customer support specialist. What did that mean? What does that mean? I mean, everyone adds specialist at the end of everything. You almost think that it's an amazing thing. All it was I was taking calls, and when customers were not able to connect to the internet using Compuserve, I was able to do some fault finding, do some checking on their setup, their config, and hopefully help them connect to the internet, because that's how Compuserve made money. The more people connected, the more money they made. Very simple. Very similar to the current ISPs of the day, right? They need more customers, and they want to keep their customers. So over the years, I worked for Compuserve. At some point, Compuserve merged or were bought by AOL, America Online. I think they still exist. And this is back in the day of dial-up, right? So now you guys have Wi-Fi and broadband, and it's instant connection. In those days, you had to dial up a number, wait for the computers to connect and talk to each other, and then you'd be on the internet. And the speeds were horrendous. You know, if I think some of the generation today, if they lived in that time, they would not survive, at least for computing. So I worked for Compuserve. They got bought by AOL. And the interesting thing is, as I worked for Compuserve, I started to get itchy feet. It's a good job. It was all right. It was paying me all right, but it wasn't interesting me. It wasn't stimulating me. It was probably a bit too monotonous, doing the same thing over and over. And it got to the point one day when I spoke to my supervisor there, and he said to me, you know, if you keep working hard, maybe in about 15 years, you might be in this position. And I looked at him and I thought, hell no, that's not really for me. I actually left that job. I didn't resign from that job. I just didn't go back. And what led me not to go back was, while working there, I always, you know, read magazines and computer magazines. At the time, there wasn't really a lot of computing websites, so I used to buy magazines. And at the back of the magazines, there were these job adverts. Oftentimes, you read these job adverts and you think to yourself, I can't possibly do that. I'll never be considered. But something said to me once, there was a job advert in there from a company called UNIX Solutions, I should apply. And I applied for the job. The job, all it said on the title of the job was, do you fancy working in France for a year? And I said to myself, oh, that's quite interesting. I wouldn't mind doing that. So I answered this job advert, and the guy that I spoke to was a guy called Simon. And this is going to go out on the internet. I wonder if Simon's still around. His name was Simon Nash, actually. And the most amazing thing is, we had a telephone interview, and Simon Nash, we was talking about IT, we're talking about computers, we talked about a whole bunch of stuff, and then all of a sudden during the interview, he started speaking French. And I was born in France, so I can speak French, and we had a conversation in French. And following the conversation in French, he says, would you like to come and work in France for a year for BP? And I was like, okay, that's interesting. What do I need to do? He goes, well, if you want to come and work on this project, turn up at this office in the next day or next week, and you know, you'll get your details and your train ticket to go and work in France. And I was, okay, brilliant. Went home, told my mom, told my dad, and they said, okay, if that's what you want to do, you can go and work in France for a year. So if you think about it, I'd been to uni, come back home, hadn't left home, hadn't set up shop, and my first real job with Compuserve was something that was quite secure, right? And here's me now, late teenager, early 20s, if you like, setting off to France on my own to work as a consultant, I had to set up a company. I had to set up my own company at that age to go out there. So it's really just going out on the limb, going out on something that is probably the most riskiest thing that I would have done up to that point in my life. And I went ahead and did it. The role was interesting. It wasn't super technical. It was actually more of a PR type role, where what we were doing was we were working for this company, BP France, and looking at their legacy systems and making sure that those legacy systems could run on the latest operating system that they were going to install, which was Windows. Windows 3.1.1 was moving to Windows NT, and it would have moved to Windows 98. So this is, way before the millennium. But the reason we were doing this was because there was that whole hoo-ha about the millennium bug. So if you know what that is, that's when the clocks were going to hit 0000 on 2000. There was this whole craziness that everything was going to go to pot because people hadn't written programs that would still work with those dates or with that date format. People believed everything would stop because of 99. So once it went to 99, went back to 00, all of a sudden the whole economic system of the world would go down. It didn't. It was, in my view, it was scaremongering, right? But there were some things that we had to do to make sure that clients were okay. They were confident that their tools and their solutions would still work, and that's why we had this team in France. So I worked there for a while. I think it was about a year. I worked there, but that's a consultancy role. At some point, you grow up. I had a lot of fun in France. Young man, lot of money, craziness, but you have to grow up. And when I came back to England, I had to get what I would call a real job, a 9-to-5 job. And that job was with a company called Intersolv. And Intersolv, if you look them up, they don't exist anymore because I've been in situations, so I talked about Compuserve and AOL, they got bought. I've been in situations, many companies that have been bought, and I'll show you more as we get through. So Intersolv, I started with, they created a solution called PVCS, which is the Polytron version control system. This is the precursor to a lot of the version control systems that you know today. So Git, CVS, all that stuff. This was there really at the start. This was primarily used for systems like mainframe systems, zero downtime systems. So quite deep technology systems needed this stuff to maintain versions of their jobs or their projects or their scripts, right? Because oftentimes those things just run the same script over and over again, and you changed it really. So that's what they did. That was the niche market. They have customers like BAE Systems, UBS, so quite ingrained organizations in countries, and that was their set. As they moved along, they wanted to move from having a mainframe base of customers to now a distributed base, people who use desktops to a bigger, sort of wider audience. And they started to buy companies and also create software that would run on modern day computers, on Linux systems, and expand their version control story into now a different set of customers. And that's kind of where I came in. I started to now talk to people who were not mainframe people, but were people who were building, websites, databases, customer solutions, like, if you like EDF, those type of companies, customer-facing solutions. But they needed somewhere to organize how they stored their source code, organize their builds, how they did their testing. And these were concepts that people were doing very manually for a long time. So here comes a company like Intersolv and Serena, and they now start to help customers solve those problems. Oftentimes, these problems customers didn't even know they had. They thought they were doing very well, right? I once went to a client and their version control system was a bunch of zip files in a folder, in a set of folders. So, that's how old and archaic certain things were in the past. So I worked for Intersolv. As I worked for Intersolv, there was a situation where they were bought or merged with another company, a company called Microfocus. and we became a company called Merrent. Still selling PVCS. We took over something else that was provided by my focus at the time, which was a tool called Dimensions, and we merged and we became Merrent, and we sold PVCS version control as well as PVCS Dimensions. And there was another tool called PVCS Team Track, which is very similar in concept to what people call or use like Jira today. You use it for bug tracking, you use it for project management as well. It still exists. You can still use it. There's a lot of customers that use it, but Atlassian Jira has really taken over in that space. And then as we move on again in my career, I get bought again, or the company I'm in gets bought again by Serena, and we become Serena Software. Incidentally, actually, before I left Serena Software, it was bought again by some venture capitalists, but the name still remains as Serena. And I used to work out there in St. Albans, which was about 3 hours away from my house. And I did that for about 8-9 years. So imagine driving all that way for 8-9 years. And at some point I decided I've had enough again. I want to look for something else. And I had 2 interviews. Incidentally, the first interview I had was with a company called Accenture. And it was in 1 week. I had an interview with Accenture and I had an interview with Symbian. The interview with Accenture seemed very consultant. It seemed very conceptual. It was almost like they were trying to sell me how I should be. In other words, can I go out to a client and convince them to use this type of software? How would I design a system to allow a client to develop or to continue selling their products online? Whereas the interview with Nokia was more around, we're going to send you some devices and we want to understand how you would test those devices. Or we're going to build mobile phones and apps, and how would you allow or create a system, a server system, to allow a mobile phone to connect to a website or a server solution and download some apps onto it? Or how would you make sure that the operating system that's running on your mobile phone actually works and is secure? That interested me more than the consultancy piece. So I took the job at Symbian. And if you know what Symbian is the operating system that used to run on all Nokia phones, or most of the Nokia phones, since the beginning of Nokia. This was when Nokia was the biggest phone provider in the world. And this is where I believe I learned a lot about DevOps, before DevOps was a thing. So, for example, as I said, we were receiving motherboards like this, and those motherboards at some point will turn into a phone, or you receive a motherboard, and you have to build a set of systems and tools that allow you to interrogate that motherboard, to run the software on it, to test it, to see if you can make phone calls, to see if you can put a SIM card in it and it can receive a signal, and to also do some diagnostics. And once you've done that, you can then release that motherboard to your developers and your testers. Okay, so if you think about that concept, that's what we're kind of doing in DevOps at the moment, is where the people who build out infrastructure, build out dev and test environments, deploy software into those environments, and then enable the developers and the testers to use those environments to code, to deliver features, and to also test features and promote them into higher environments. The difference, of course, with mobility is that my production system is a mobile phone that you or anyone else has in their hand. That's my production system, right? Whereas on other things that we think of traditionally, a production system could be a website, or it could be an API platform, that sort of stuff. But the concepts are still the same. It's just another, if you like, another industry. So that's where I was at Symbian. Symbian then got bought in its entirety. It was owned partially by Nokia, but then they decided to buy the whole thing. And I worked for a team in Symbian that worked with Nokia's competitors. So to some degree, I couldn't really stay in Symbian. Interesting thing enough is that Accenture also wanted to get into the mobility game. Not necessarily to make phones, but to also have a stake in that market that was growing very rapidly. So at the time, Google was releasing Android. At the time, Apple had released their first iPhone. I think it was on the iPhone 1. We had people like RIM who were doing BlackBerry. So there was a whole ecosystem just getting ready to burst. And Nokia were at the top. The interesting thing, I'll say one thing about Nokia at the time, is that we were a very technology focused and product focused company. Whereas companies like Apple, and maybe to some degree also Google, were very focused on the apps. To some degree, they didn't really care that the phone had a Snapdragon chip in it. They cared more about being able to do something like FaceTime, or, oh look, this app allows you to video call your friends or whatever. In Nokia, we had video calls since the beginning, right? Apple turn around and call it FaceTime, and it becomes a big thing. So there was just that change. Apple made it almost cool to be in this tech industry, and I think that stole a lot of the limelight away from, you know, the companies that were doing it for a long time. Sorry, Nokians, but that is the truth. I was there.
It's the truth, Emmanuel.
It's the truth. So, you know, I know some people may find it hard to swallow, but it's the truth. So here I am. So a company that was formed within the organization, the Symbian and the Nokia organization was called Sosco. And they had to form this company because it then allowed Accenture to buy that company and bring us in as the first mobility team into Accenture. When I joined Accenture, guys, if I remember rightly, there was no concept or idea around building mobile phones or building mobile apps. And it was very interesting because I remember asking someone once about how can I get a Linux server? And they provided me a desktop in which I installed SUSE Linux, and I put that desktop under my desk. And from that desktop, the entire team were able to version control their software or their code in Git, on a Git server that I'd created for them to use. That was how far back things were in those days. This was AWS existed, but we were not allowed to use it. It was that was how far back we were in Accenture at that point. So I'm in Accenture now, and we're brought in for a reason. We're brought in to show that we can create an Android platform. We can create a mobile phone platform. We can also tap into that market, that embedded systems market, and start to show that Accenture can provide solutions or help provide solutions for those customers. Those customers being people like Motorola, like Texas Instruments. Basically anyone who needs a mobile phone or an embedded system. Customers like Land Rover, like Jaguar, that started putting mobile devices into their cars in the form of infotainment systems. That's essentially the type of projects that I was working on. But one of the main projects that sticks in my mind was an internal project. And this was created by a guy, or spearheaded by a guy called Aidan Culligan, I could say his name, because he's an absolute brilliant guy. And he was one of the, I would say he was someone that I looked up to in Accenture. And I looked up to him because he was a very forward-thinking guy. And his vision was that we were going to create a paperless event for all the MDs, and it was going to be held out in Brazil. And my team, the team I worked in, was put on point to create the application being a full Android platform, and all the apps running on the platform. So things like chat, things like the event agenda, things like newsreel that I had to keep up to date every day. Things like maybe the ability for people to interact with the sessions, right? And this was all going to be on a tablet, that when an MD came to the seminar, they would receive a tablet and they would use that tablet for the entirety of their session out there in Brazil. So I went out to Brazil, I think it was about 1 or 2 weeks, best time of my life, ate a lot of meat, put a lot of weight on, drank a lot of caipirinhas. But we created a solution. And at one point, interestingly enough, in one of the guys' hotel room, we had a conveyor belt system where I created a server that allowed us to flash the operating system onto the tablets. Someone else then took the tablets and they arranged the icons because we couldn't do it automatically back in those days. Someone else took the tablet and then tested to make sure that it was charged. Then someone else switched it off and someone else boxed it. So we had this conveyor belt system in someone's hotel room in Brazil with a whole bunch of caipirinhas coming in to make sure that we were fed and watered and so on. Yeah, crazy times, but that's what we did, right?
Wow.
And that led to a lot of good things. That led to a lot of good things in Accenture because, you know, as part of that whole concept of are we able to build an operating system of our own from Android, we then landed some good work and things evolved into what we now call maybe the IoT business, the digital business, the embedded system business, the products business. So, you know, you got to start somewhere. And I think that was a very good starting point for my career in Accenture. So, present day, let's see where we are. So present day is very interesting. Present day, what I do nowadays is I've landed into a lot of roles which put me in as the DevOps lead. And a lot of you guys, maybe some of the guys didn't really join at the beginning, but I had a little bit of a rant around the whole concept of DevOps or DevOps people or DevOps engineers. DevOps really isn't really a thing per se, right? It's more of a way to deliver software or solutions securely, with quality, at speed, and also with automation. Automation, I think, is the real key here, right? So I want to be able to automate the creation of my entire infrastructure. I want to be able to do automatic tests. I want to be able to do automatic security scans. I want to be able to automatically promote things into high environments. That's really, if you think about it that way, it becomes more around, first of all, the skill to do that automation, but also how do you convince organizations that never did anything in that way before to buy into your automation story? That's the culture bit. That's the bit that a lot of people forget about. So those are the two facets to it. And then all around those things are the tools that you need. Just like any other trade, you're going to need some tools to make sure that you do things the right way. So you might have heard of Kubernetes for containerization. You might have heard of Docker. You might have heard of things like Jira, which I mentioned around project management and the link into Agile. You might have heard of things like Git. Git is the perfect version control system for anyone doing something like this. It's a distributed version control system. It doesn't have everything stored necessarily in one place per se. You have a Git server, but you can clone the code and you can work remotely. That's a great concept in terms of version control. Back in the days, you might have used something like Subversion or even PVCS that I talked about, which always needed you to be connected to the server to create new versions. But Git takes that away, that whole concept, and flips it. And then other things as well, right? So Jenkins, again, you're going to hear if you're in the DevOps space. It's an orchestrator. It's a tool that allows you to do or control a lot of that automation that I talked about, or at least execute a lot of that automation that I talked about. But you have to learn how to make it do that. It just doesn't do it, right? And this is, I think, where a lot of people say, now, if you understand how to do that, then you must be a DevOps engineer, right? It's only one aspect of it. It's bigger than that. More times than not, in the current industry, a DevOps team is really an enabler. We're a bunch of people that understand how the devs work. We understand how what the security guys want. We understand what the business wants. We also understand what the testers and, more importantly, for the project, what the operations guys need to have in place in order for them to run the software in production and maybe even high environments leading up to production. That's the whole point, right? And that's why it's called DevOps, because we're the glue that puts those two things together. Whereas in the past, you might think that developers or development team will create something, they'll make it available, and then the operations team just have to make sure that they can get it to work. And oftentimes, if there's a problem, they have to raise a ticket. It takes some time to fix, and you get into this position where the devs are almost throwing things over a wall. This was always the concept that people tended to show. DevOps is more of a loop, right? So you now have devs who are actually creating things and being responsible for it running in high environments. And you now have ops people able to talk directly with the devs and provide a good feedback loop. And oftentimes it might not even be an ops person do that. You might have a system. In fact, you should have a system that monitors things and automatically provides a feedback loop back into the system and to the right people. That's the real gem of putting DevOps into a project properly. And then it evolves a bit further, where you have what people are calling SRE or site reliability engineers. This is a concept really, I guess, called more by Google, which has been brought into now. And this is almost, I wouldn't say it's an evolution of DevOps, but this is where you're now looking at the whole concept of DevOps at a higher level, at a senior level. And we tend to start to see a lot of now roles coming in and removing the DevOps moniker and having SRE in place as a concept. So that's me in the present day. In the future, so more recently, I've joined a team called Industry XO, which takes me a little bit back to the sort of mobility IoT days that I had in digital, in Accenture Digital. So I'm keen now to start looking at some of the projects that we have, things in IoT, things in wearables, things in products. So yeah, that would be my future venture. So that's kind of a very, hopefully quite quick or useful talk around my life from when I started to where I am today, with some little anecdotes and some points around DevOps. I didn't really want this to be a DevOps specific talk, but more quite general. And I hope that has been useful. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Emmanuel. That has been amazing. Wow, like I didn't actually realize you started your career so early. That is so encouraging. I mean, at the age of in your early 20s and late teens, you're already
Yes.
working at that volume of responsibilities. That is so encouraging. I'm sure
That's scary.
I'm sure most of us here have found it really inspiring. Yes.
I hope so.
Yes. Yes, a recording. We're currently recording the session and it will be uploaded on YouTube afterwards. So if you have registered, we would send the YouTube link to you so you can rewatch the program.
Cool.
So if you have any questions, please put them in chat box. But we have some questions up front. So Emmanuel, if that's okay by you, I'll just read out some of those questions and then
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the first question is really spot on, and I'll just kind of rephrase it. I mean, from your story, you've actually you've seen technology at different phases. I mean, you talked
Yeah.
about when you worked in Nokia for many years and
Mm-hmm.
how things operated there, and see the transition to where we are today as far as tech is concerned. So this person is trying to understand how you have constantly handled the world of tech and stayed on top of your game with the fact that technology has been changing since you started your career over 20 years ago. And
Yeah.
what are the major challenges that you faced and how did you resolve them?
Okay. Yeah, I think also there was I think someone wanted to ask how I weathered the storm in my IT career as well, right?
Yes, how
Yeah,
you
so maybe I'll touch on those three things.
okay.
So major challenges. I think everyone on the call here is highly melanated, and by that I mean black. I think maybe everyone on the call here is of an African heritage.
Yes.
That's always been a barrier. I can't, no matter where you're born, no matter what school you go to, what education you have, your race is always going to be a barrier. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not true, because it is. It's a fact. But what I did is I went and learned about technology, and I always wanted to go and learn about what was hot at that time. What's the hot topic at the time? What's the hot tool at the time? What's the hot piece of technology that, if you know it, oftentimes it doesn't really matter if you're black or white. It's just that you know it, right? And you can help deliver that solution to the clients that want to use it in their business or their product. And I convinced myself that by doing that, race probably wouldn't matter. Always not true, it didn't matter, but it was helpful. It was often hard though to get your foot into the door, into those projects. And you had to know the right people. It's very important that you build a good network. If you don't build a good network, it doesn't matter how cool you are. So again, sometimes it even doesn't matter how much you know, you may not get your foot into that door. Know your stuff, definitely, but you do need a good network to allow you to show the right people that you know your stuff. That's a very important thing. The journey was challenging for me, not from a technology point of view. It was more challenging for me from navigating and getting soft skills. I loved gaming. I didn't like talking to people. I didn't like explaining technical stuff to people, but I learned how to do that. In the jobs that I've had to do that. I had to do that at Compuserve, I had to do that at Serena, I had to do that at Nokia to some degree, and I have to do that on a daily basis in Accenture, whether it's someone internally or a client that I'm going to talk to. So I've got to understand my stuff, and I've got to be able to articulate my stuff to them or the solution to them very well. So I had to learn how to do that. I had to learn how to present myself, how to present technical things at different levels. To be able to talk to a technologist and him or her be confident that this guy knows what he's talking about, and at the same time to be able to sell to a C-suite level executive that they should pay for my time to build them a system with their team, or to bring in a team to build a system. And those are two different languages. You're talking about the same piece of software or solution, but it's two different languages and two different skill sets that you need to learn. So those are the challenging things. Technology, you can learn. There's tools or websites or courses out there that will let you learn technology quickly. And if you've got that mindset, you can pick it up. And even if you haven't, it will take you a bit longer, but you will learn it. Getting to build a network, getting to build and talk to people at different levels is not really something you can go and train. You have to have worked through it and lived it. Those are the challenging things I would say that I found. And then to the point around weathering the storm, you weather the storm, in my opinion, by building, let's take a concept of a storm. You build a good foundation for your house. You weather, right? And that foundation, as I said, I've talked about network. You get the right people around you. Look for mentors. Look for people that, you don't necessarily have to say to the guy or the lady, I want you to be my mentor, but you can actually look at what they're doing and they can mentor you from afar without sometimes not even knowing it, right? Follow people who have reached a place that you think you want to reach and understand how they've got there, and then mirror some of those things. Build up confidence to ask people like this question: what mistakes did you make? Therefore, you can understand and not to make those mistakes as well, right? So those are the points I would say that were challenging, and also how I weathered the storm in my IT career.
Wow, thank you so much, Emmanuel. Thank you for being very real and very honest. Like, I love what you said about the fact that, the first thing you did, considering race and all of that, was to make sure that you were very good. You were mastering hot skills, hot tech skills.
That's the important thing.
And then you talked about the soft skill sides of things too as well. Okay, I have another question for you from there, but before I go to that one, I just want to focus on the ones that, have come in earlier. And please, if you do have any questions, please send to me. Okay, I can see some coming and we'll do that. So there was a question around real life scenarios in your job, but I feel like you've talked about that already.
I talked a bit about that, yes. And I didn't want to go into, as I said, I talked a bit about DevOps. One thing I will say is the culture bit is very important, and depends where you go. So myself and Solo, we've worked at different companies, different types of companies. We've worked in FS, we've worked in banks, and we can start to identify patterns of how different clients behave. So for example, you know, as a DevOps evangelist, you want to say to the customer, you know what, I can automate that so that you can deploy into your systems or your production systems whenever you want. But the bank will tell you, no, we only do deployments once a year, or we do deployments once security say that it's right to do deployments, or when the industry says that we need to do it. So there's other things around that would hinder you pushing automation. So you've got to be very careful how you force things. You don't want to force too many things. You've got to be very patient. And you also have to, if you're going to go into a place, you have to firstly understand the culture of the place. And then if you want to change that culture, you've got to do it easily. You can't force things.
Yeah.
You know, that's essentially what we've been doing for the past, I guess it was 6 years now, wasn't it? Or four to 6 years on different projects in Accenture.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I mean, it's so true. I guess one thing I always say is like, basically, you just have to start at the level that people are.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just bring a high level solution and impose it on them and expect them to understand. So it has to be something that they can relate with, and you gradually build up on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. So we have a question here around a couple of them. We'll just take it together. You know, I'd like to know very important skills I need to have an excellent career in technology.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as someone transitioning from agri to, okay, that one is different. So, so in terms of important skills that you need for an excellent career, I think you've touched about it. Let me combine it with Wasiu's question. Wasiu's question is, you mentioned identifying the next hot skills and then learning those better to better position yourself as a strategy of being continually relevant. How can one develop skills of identifying this next hot skills given the realities in Nigeria?
That's a very good question, right? How do you know what's going to be hot?
Yeah.
It's a tough one, right? And I guess I don't have an almanac. I'm not a time traveler. I haven't built my flux capacitor yet. It's not yet working. Still working on that. So I don't know. I can't read the future. But I can spot trends, right? And also, if you think of Nigeria, look at where we are in Nigeria at the moment, right? And compare it to where other countries are and where we think we want to be. So we can see that other countries have already made that journey. We can already go look historically how they've made that journey, what mistakes they've made, and we can then start to apply only the good things in Nigeria when it comes to tech, right? So let me give you an example. If we look at the way the internet is at the moment in Nigeria, again, I don't live in Nigeria. I've got cousins that live there. My dad lives there. And they tell me that it's not good. The internet providers are making a ton of money, but the service is not fantastic, right? A real genius, if someone had money, should fix that and make it good enough for every household, for every child to have some form of connection to some form of internet. And by internet, I don't necessarily mean European internet. You can have your own localized servers. You can create your own local internet. That's what the Chinese did, right?
Yeah.
So again, I'm not an oracle, but I've just looked at things and I've said to myself, well, why can't we just do that? Right? So those are the type of things that you need to identify. Yeah. Other things as well, if you want to be a futurist, you can say, well, actually, a lot of people are now looking at AI and VR. This is new technology. There's nothing wrong with Nigeria being in a new technology space. We don't necessarily have to go through all the steps. We can go straight to the new technology. Why not?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's things that we can do. We mustn't bracket ourselves as, oh, we're just Nigeria and it's so hard. I don't buy into that. And I'll talk a bit more about that, an initiative later on that maybe tries to address that question.
In fact, Emmanuel, that is so brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Like, I love what you said. We don't need to, I mean, you talked about the two sides of things, right? We don't need to start on high level and trying to get Nigeria to be up there, but even in the technologies that we're using, we can try to make it the best
Of
possible.
course.
I mean, that's amazing. And
Of course.
the next question here is, so basically someone is asking, as Azure DevOps and AWS DevOps,
Yeah.
which one do you recommend? And then I'll combine that with effective ways to become a DevOps engineer. Okay, I think everything related to DevOps, if you can just cover it together.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that was a specific question. Azure DevOps. So if you don't know, Azure is Microsoft's platform
Yeah.
online to build out infrastructure for their clients, or at least you build out infrastructure for yourself or your clients or whatever. And AWS is Amazon's. I'm going to be completely biased. I'm Amazon all the way. Sorry, Microsoft. I've got an Xbox. That helps. But I mean, I've been using AWS since forever,
Yeah.
and I've not. It works for me. They have solutions in there. I mean, look, I keep talking about being a gamer. They actually have a gaming platform in AWS that I can use to build a game. If I spent the time and I did it, I could do that. It's fantastic. I think the whole concept of it has allowed someone like me, who is a technologist but also a hobbyist, to, in his own special personal time, create systems that I would have taken ages to create in my home. I can do that online. To be able to write a script that builds out, if you like, an entire data center, a virtual data center.
Yeah.
You can do that in Azure as well. Don't get me wrong, but I just believe AWS is better at the moment.
Okay.
Sorry, Microsoft. What was the other question?
Other DevOps questions, like basically how to become a DevOps engineer, how to your skills, how you can transform your current skill sets and experience and training into DevOps.
Okay, there was an agriculture question around similar to that. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, how do you become a DevOps engineer? Very interesting question. If you've done, I would say, if you've done a support role, like a technical support role, where you've had to learn a piece of software and technology that you probably didn't know anything about very quickly, and have the ability to support that software in production, you're halfway there. If you also have some scripting background, have an understanding of programming languages, have an IT degree, but not necessarily have an IT degree, just, or have a degree. Have an idea of how to break something and fix it. Be very analytical. Excuse me. Question things. Have a lot of questions when it comes to this is the way that we do things in our organization. If you're the type of person that says why, that's one massive aspect or set of aspects that will lead you down the road of being in the world of DevOps. If you also have security in your mind, so you say to yourself, okay, this website, we're going to create this website, but how do we make sure that people can log on to that website and that they're not going to be compromised? How do we make sure that it's secure in the sense of it not being susceptible to, DDoS attacks or denial by service attacks or bot attacks, that sort of stuff, or hackers, right? If you have security in mind, then you're also partway there. And then the most important thing I would always say is, if you also know what the end goal is for the business. Is the business trying to create the fastest website in the world? Are they trying to get 10,000 or 100,000 more customers? Are they in the position, or do they want to have something released out to the market faster than their competitors? Understand those concepts as well, because as a DevOps engineer, you want to understand how your work, your automation, reflects or helps the business achieve their goals. Learn those things and you'll start on the journey of DevOps. Of course, there's tools, don't get me wrong. And I could list a whole bunch of tools: Python, Perl, Ruby, Bash scripting, Terraform, CloudFormation, Ansible, Jenkins, Git. We can keep going, right? There's methodologies. You can go and learn Agile, you can go and learn Safe. All those things lead up or add to your repertoire. But if you don't have the basic things I talked about, you can learn all the tools in the world and you just be someone who knows tools.
Yeah.
So
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. That is so good. I think I'll just take this as a final question from Stefan,
cool.
which is around how does being Black in the industry affect you at very senior levels, such
This
as
is
director?
this is a very good question, Stefan. And I know Stefan very well.
Yes.
This guy's like my brother, man. So, great question. There's not many of us. It's a simple thing I'll say. And it's, I think it's sometimes you could probably look at it and say that you're sad about it. You can do it two ways, right? There's always someone who, if you say to yourself, I'm the only Black man in the room or the only Black person in the room, you can look at it two ways. I have an opportunity here. If I'm the only Black person here, then there's no other competition to get promoted because they might need more Black people at higher levels, right? Some people look at it that way. It saddens me that I'm the only Black person sometimes in that conversation because I don't generally compete. I don't look at other people as competition. I like to have people around me that are similar to me. Not necessarily just in color, but in culture as well. I want to uplift my culture. So when I go into a room and I'm the only Black person in there, that worries me because it often means to me that a lot of my people are not getting promoted from where they are to where they should be. And what tends to happen is we do two things as Black people. We're contented with being the only Black person in the room in the conversation, and we don't help elevate our people.
Wow.
Well, that's what we do. I'm sorry to say people might not agree with it, but I've seen it and I've been there. Another thing that we also do as Black people, and I'll say this at junior level, is we want to run before we can walk. Right? So oftentimes, I think I could be a senior manager in 2 years. Come on, let's be realistic, right? Take your time. Some of the guys I know in the teens and the 20s, take your time. You can make senior manager in 5-6 years. You could be an MD in 10 years. You can create that plan and you can achieve it. But if you think you're going to do it in 2 years, you're not going to do it in 2 years. I'll tell you that now. And the person who tells you that you can do it in 2 years is lying to you. And then if I talk about director or MD, I find that to be almost still, to some degree, an all boys club. There's female MDs now coming through, and if I'm honest with you, this is nothing to be. It's not about being sexist or anything like that. I prefer to have a female boss than a male boss.
Yay, that's good to hear.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. A whole bunch of men in a room trying to make a decision, nothing will get done. There's too much testosterone. I've seen it. I've seen it happen. We need to be controlled sometimes. That's the truth. Sorry guys, we do. Right? And a lot of CEOs, male CEOs, are saying, "Oh, what's this guy talking about?" Look, it's the truth, right? But the change that is now happening is where we're now seeing a lot of ladies come into the industry at senior level. They're now able to give us another perspective on how to behave as men, and a better understanding oftentimes of taking ego out of conversation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah?
Nice.
That's the thing I think that we all need to learn. And I go into meetings with senior ranking people, C-suite MDs, and I talk to them on the level. I don't massage their egos. I don't need to massage their egos. I don't want to, and I don't go in there with an ego, right? And that sometimes to the right person is refreshing. To the wrong person, they might say, "Who's this idiot?" But then if I see that, then I don't need to deal with you. I know the right people to deal with. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Those are the reasons of or what being Black means as a senior manager and also as a director.
Wow.
It's still tough. I'm not gonna lie. It's still tough because there's not that many of us.
Wow. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. I think that also like awakens me to the fact that I have a responsibility, when we get up there to always remember fact that, we need to pull people up as well. Okay, Emmanuel, sorry, this will be the final question.
That's right.
And this will
Sure.
be the last question, and then we'll go on to the DevOps training that is coming up. So
Yeah.
Kelly's asking a question that she says thanks, and she says that she's yet to see an entry DevOps role, that she has a knowledge in Bash script, Golang. Do you advise we apply for intern roles? Else points us to learning paths that we could follow. So basically, she has a background in IT support, which she talks about earlier today. So what do you advise if she wants to go from support into DevOps?
I would say if there's an intern role that allows you to expand on those skills, do it. Don't be scared to go into any role that you feel you have the skills to achieve. And also think of roles like this. You expand your knowledge on roles as well, right? You learn, there's training often provided. Exploit those training. I think a lot of people that I've mentored in the past, I've always said to them, go and use the training. The company is offering you training, use it. Learn how to do something. Go and get another skill, right? Yeah, so I would say if you get an intern role, do that. But at the same time, some of the stuff I said before is look out for what's hot, right? And try and use that often to make yourself a differentiator to the other people who have just done the bog standard thing, right? Go and learn about what's hot. When I first joined Accenture, no one backed the use of Git. People wanted to use a centralized version control system, and I pushed for the use of Git. And I'm sure people will probably say, this guy's nuts, right? I pushed for the use of Jenkins. At the time it was called Hudson, right? I pushed for that. So, and I'm not suggesting I'm the reason why it's used organization-wide, but I feel I had something to do with it, because otherwise, right? So that's the kind of thing I would say. Don't be scared to be that person that is seen as a disruptor. Because that's what we do, right? Be a digital disruptor. Ask the questions why. And I think if you go into an interview and you're offered certain scenarios and you're able to give alternative scenarios to the person interviewing you, the interviewer, yeah, right?
Yeah.
That will often buy you more points than someone who just answers based on what they've read on Wikipedia or the standard stuff that they've done online, right? If you can show a different level of thinking, that is what gets you to where you need to get to.
Absolutely. Wow, that was so good. So Kelly, I mean, you have your answer right there.
I hope so.
Let's get hands on. Yeah, and that's surely my journey as well. And thank you so much, Emmanuel. Like I would say that the opportunity that I've had in Accenture. I mean, it's been working with Emmanuel and learning on the job. And I remember you encouraging me multiple times to pick up data stacks. Everyone is doing DevOps, so add data stacks to your skills. And
Right.
it's just so important to make sure that even as much as you're learning on the job, you're also focusing on areas that people are not really doing, and that kind of gives you that advantage.
That edge. That's right.
That edge. Okay, thank you so much. That's been an amazing Q&A session, and then we'll just quickly move over to the training that Emmanuel is going to announce today.
Yeah. So, as I said, I'm of Nigerian heritage. I see a lot of our guys in Europe. I see a lot of our guys in Nigeria who can achieve a lot, but they don't have the opportunity. So in my mind, I'm thinking of a concept. I'm thinking, well, we have a lot of brainy people. We have a lot of smart people. There's a workforce here. We can energize a workforce. And this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. This is a long-term plan. And what I'm offering really is a way to start to build this workforce. And it's to build a workforce in the same way that other countries, other cultures have built. There is no reason why we can't do it, right? And to build a workforce initially talking about DevOps, but it can lead into, and it will lead into other areas in IT, cybersecurity, which is very hot at the moment, AI, VR, new things that are coming in the future, right? IoT. But I know at the moment that I work in DevOps and it's something that I can do, so I can impart that knowledge. So the first part of the training is an introductory course, a free introductory course into DevOps. And I'm signing up people. It's not going to be for everyone. I can't possibly do it for 1,000 people. I haven't got the network yet like Sola has.
Oh my
But but certainly, you know, I will try and make it available to as many people as possible. The view of it, though, is not necessarily just about the course. It's about us trying to find the right people who will help us start to build this workforce, initially from Nigeria, right? And this is a workforce that will then allow us to put people into projects, to put people into companies, excuse me, and to work on future projects. I'm looking for future thinkers. I'm looking for people, as I've said in this discussion, who will challenge the current state of IT and DevOps in the world and say, you know, I think we could probably do it this way. Or let's do DevOps the Niger way, right? Where's that? I've not seen that. You know, and I think that's where I want to start with this. So the concept is not rocket science. There's other companies doing very similar things, but not really in this niche. So what I've done is I've created a very simple website which allows you to register. It's a product. It's of a company. It's called Tiamaca, so Tiamica. Interestingly enough, I'll tell you what that is. My daughter was called Tia. My son was called Micah. So that's kind of where that came from. Very simple. And the concept really is just to say that I want to impart my knowledge to some people in the same way that I want to impart my knowledge to my children. Hence the name, right? And that's it. That's all it's going to be. And what I will also bring into the mix is a whole bunch of people that I know have got those skills. So Sola, I'm definitely going to drag you in. Good question from Stefan. I'm going to pull you in as well. But these are people I know that have done these things in the past, right? And are strong-minded. And there'll be other people as well. But the whole concept is really to make sure that you can join this workforce. I'll put the link in here. Hang on, let's do this. Into the chat. And then if you want to join it up, you can join it up. And then we can start talking about it in the future. So here we go.
Cool.
And here it is.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. All right, so it's a very simple form. You know, and if you answer the questions based on that, we'll get back in contact, and then we'll start to look at the different levels of training that we have on offer. The idea that, as I said, the end game is to build a workforce, to put people on the books, and to make sure that we can start to elevate our people in the continent, and start in Nigeria, but in Africa. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Amazing. Wow. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. So I expect everyone to have clicked on that link to do your registration, and Emmanuel would, you know, the team would definitely get back to you on that. So Emmanuel, thank you so much. And
most welcome.
I do appreciate all the time about you is your passion for Africa, for Nigeria. Like I always enjoy those conversations. Every time I say I'm not feeling fire, like, oh, have pepper soup, have suya.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
What else is there?
So thank you so much, Emmanuel. I know you're very passionate about Nigeria. We see your heart. And the idea of putting together a free DevOps training just to reach out to people who are very intelligent but don't have the opportunity to learn these things, I think is so brilliant. And I believe in your vision. And obviously, I'm going to be working along with you on that as well. So I just want everyone here to please take advantage of this opportunity and don't keep it to yourselves alone. I know. Tell people about it. Click.
That's right.
And Emmanuel, so it's going to be a DevOps training now, and you know he's already explained what the whole thing is all about. So please take advantage of that. And if you're on the TheOpsNetwork mailing list, I'm going to also send that to you as well. You know, so please take advantage of it, and that's a very good way. Also, back to the question that someone asked earlier, that what can we do in Nigeria? This is one of the things we can do. Free training. Emmanuel is going to take you from nothing on a journey to learning a skill. And if someone is committed to that and being very serious about it, then, you know, before you know it, you actually have a very good IT career. So Yeah. So thank you so much, Emmanuel. That has
You're
been
welcome.
a session. And can everyone please just tell us how the session has been in the chat box? Can you use one adjective to qualify this session as we wrap up? I would like to see our comments on that. Oh, someone says, wow.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that. Emmanuel, while people are saying that, can I just ask if you have any final words for the audience and for people that watch this?
So, it's going to be cliche, right? There's going to be a situation in your life where you need to take a leap of faith, right? And I think my dad says this to me all the time. He says a statement that's, be steadfast. Steadfastness of purpose, he always says to me, right? And I always took that to mean that have a goal, understand what you want to do, and be steadfast in achieving it. You're going to have blockers. You're going to have people coming up. There's going to be situations. There's going to be COVID situations, right? This COVID thing that's happening now. There's going to be the whole fact that you are black, and everyone seems to tell you that being black, you must work 10 times harder and all that nonsense, right? I don't agree about that, right? I agree that if you're steadfast, if you go out and use the opportunities that are available in yourself, you can make it to where you want to make it, right? That's always what I've lived by, and I'll leave you guys with that.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Let me just read out some of the adjectives we have here. So people have said it's been wow, it's been enlightening, it's been powerful,
Thank you guys.
insightful, fantastic, an eye-opening one. It's been impressive.
Wow.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Most welcome, guys.
Yeah. So
and I look forward to speaking to you all in the future as well.
yeah, so I would unmute everyone now. If anyone wants to say anything, as we feel free to unmute yourselves and just say a word. I mean, we're wrapping up in 2 minutes. If anyone.
When are we starting? When is the training starting? Tell me when it's starting. I'm almost done.
So yeah, so just to give you a view on that. So on the website we have a roadmap. It was due to start obviously in September, but they're obviously with the COVID situation and pulling things together. We're probably going to look to start maybe in October now, but it's online, so you're not going to lose out. As I say, fill up the form, you match, you have the right answers, you have the right attitude, then it's going to be made available to you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other thing from anyone? The session is basically over already. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Anu. I see that.
Okay. All right. So I was just going to say thank you to you, Bimi, and thank you to Emmanuel.
Thank you, Wasiu. Thank you for.
You're welcome, Wasiu. You're most welcome, sir.
I want to ask the last question. While trying to fill, I noticed the last column, it's asking, can you travel to European, Middle Eastern, African countries? Yes or no? I want to know if it's just a question to know if we have interest in, or it's going to require us to come there.
It's if you have interest in. Thanks. It's more about the interest.
Okay. Thank you so much.
As I said, the whole initiative started before the whole global pandemic. So the question isn't necessarily saying that we're going to uproot you and move you in different places. And another thing as well, one interesting thing as well, is because of this pandemic, we're doing a lot of these things online. A lot of things that we're thought of you were not able to do online, we've managed to do it online. A lot of jobs can be done online in the future.
Sure.
So, and that for me starts to talk about there is no reason why someone in Nigeria should not be able to work on a project remotely.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Exactly.
Right?
Very true.
So,
Very true.
thank you, COVID, maybe.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you so much. Very excited. Thank you.
Right?
Just hope to hear more from you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
I just want to say brief thank you to Emmanuel. I really appreciate it. I recently moved to United States from Nigeria, and I'm the agricultural engineer that asked that question, and it's been so interesting finding myself in an IT-driven environment in Boston. I've been looking into transitioning into DevOps. So this was really enlightening and eye-opening for me. And thank you, Bimisola, for organizing this. And I've also registered into that program. I hope I'll be able to get everything needed. Thank you so much.
Amazing.
No problem.
Thank you, Kolayemi. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're welcome.
All right, cool. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Aruna. Thank you, Anu. Thank you, DT. Thank you, Funke. Thank you, Fumi. Thank you, John. Thank you, SJP, Vantage, Wasiu, and Innocent. So we'll just call it close there today. Emmanuel, a very big thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.